Hello. Welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I am your host, Keri. Today is March 8th, Friday. I hope you're having a great Friday. I just wanted to give a special thanks to the guys who joined us who were part of Deprogrammed Book Club yesterday. This is the first one we've done in over a year. And I also happened to schedule it the day of the State of the Union address because I sometimes am not aware in advance of what's going to be happening. I've also scheduled things during the Super Bowl. Anyway, we had a great conversation about the book Critical Dilemma by Neil Shenvi and Pat Sawyer. And we're going to be putting that up on Rumble as a Rumble exclusive. So you guys can watch the conversation if you want to. And we'll be announcing the new book that we're going to be reading and a date for that book club soon. But you'll have a couple of months. It'll be a couple of months before we do the next one. It was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for showing up. This book, I'll just say, if you haven't read it yet, if you didn't join us, I've done an interview with the authors here on the channel with Neil Shenvi and Pat Sawyer, which you can watch. I think this is one of the best books I've read to date addressing social justice ideology, woke ideology, my old belief system. They call it contemporary critical theory in the book. And it is from a Christian perspective. This is a book written by two Christians there's three parts to the book. The first part is they're basically defining the problem. What is contemporary critical theory or, social justice, woke ideology? What is it? What's its history? Where did it come from? What are the central tenets? The second part of the book is a Christian criticism of the belief system. And then the third part is ideas on engagement and moving forward. And so it is specifically from a Christian perspective. However, I suspect that a lot of people won't have to be Christian to take a lot from the book. And I think this is probably going to become the book that I recommend the most to people who are still in the woke world, in the social justice cult, who I believe are well-intentioned and sincere. That's not everyone in there, of course. There's a lot of people in there who are never going to read a book like this. They're not open-minded. They're hateful. They don't have good intent. But for the ones who I think are sincere and who want to better understand social justice ideology, I think this book is a great place to start. So there's just a little update on that book and on the discussion we had yesterday. And thank you guys for being here today. We are simulcasting on Rumble. And so if you're watching over there, hello. We're trying to grow the Rumble channel as well. And so we're going to be putting out some things that are just exclusive to Rumble, like the book club discussion. Super Based is here. Hello. Our little membership fairy is here. Super Based just gifted 5 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much. Thanks for supporting the channel. Super Based, you guys grab those up. And yeah, I see a lot of regulars here. Okay. Today is March 8th. It is International Women's Day. So today's our day. I'm kidding. It is International Women's Day, but I'm joking about our day. I told my husband, I said, hey, we're going to have a date. He has a rare Friday off where he doesn't have to work Friday night. Usually he's doing shows. So we're going to have a date night. And I was like, just so you know, it is my day today. It is Women's Day. I don't know when Latink's Day is, but I know today's Women's Day. That's our group. And I'm just kidding. I don't care about days set aside for identity groups, days or months. I think it's all divisive crap, and I don't think it's helpful. So, but at the same time, I think it's pretty funny that on the one day that social justice woke people have set aside for women, they're like International Women's Day. Da, 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 da. I saw an article this morning that I had to share that was, you know, don't forget to celebrate trans women on International Women's Day. And I just think that's hilarious. It's like how many months and days and pretty much the whole year now is LGBTQ plus, queer and then the one day that they've set aside for women, they're like, don't forget to celebrate men. Anyway, that's kind of funny. And I I had to point that out. Okay. Happy International Women's Day. Oh, the other thing I noticed, I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. I saw this online. Here, let me see if I can pull this up. Google has a whole thing about how they're celebrating women and working for equity for women, which sounds awful. Equity is not equality, it's discrimination. It's necessarily sexist, racist. When you see that word, it should be an immediate red flag. And this was going around. They have this new thing up about women's health. And so some of you may have seen probably in real time this push to start using this made up word cis for anyone who's not trans. It's a trick of language. It's a language trick. The attempt is to get you to engage in the game, to play the game, to to quote unquote normalize being trans, which is not normal. It's not normal to have gender dysphoria. It's not normal to believe you're born in the wrong body or that you need to change uh, your genitalia. It's not normal. I appreciate the people I know, many people I know with gender dysphoria who admit that and they feel condescended to with this new push to normalize it and to pretend that it's not a mental disorder. And so this is an attempt to confuse children and this whole cis thing is to confuse children and to make them think like, oh, this is a natural thing. You have to decide. You have to decide if you're cis or trans, you should figure this out. It's not a natural thing. It's a mental disorder that historically has affected, 0.01% of the population until we started injecting it into education and into children's spaces. So cis is something that they've tried to push, and I refuse to play that game. I saw a funny meme yesterday that said, if somebody asks if you're cis or trans, just say normal. I'm normal, which it's funny, and it'll also get your point across, and it'll also probably bother them a little bit. um, but I don't, if somebody calls me cis or says cis around me, I like to joke, but I do. If somebody says cis around me, I like to say gesundheit and just, offer them a tissue. And so there's this new thing now where Google is trying to, I'm sure this is being introduced elsewhere, but Google is trying to introduce the phrase women plus, like LGBTQ plus, women plus. They have the little plus sign there. And they're saying, they support healthcare for women plus. Okay, so what's that mean? I had people when I shared this online were asking, "What's women plus?" It's nothing. It's made up. It's another language game to attempt to get us to play with it. They mean trans women. They mean biological men who say that they identify as women, which means you're not talking about women at all. If you're talking, we're this is about healthcare for women plus. Okay, then it's not about healthcare for women. So quit pretending. So that's the new thing. I suspect we'll start to see a lot more of that, women plus. I suggest you reject it outright the same way I suggest you reject cis and other language games that attempt to force us to be a part of this ideology and to adopt some of the tenets of the ideology. Yes, Dion says it's women plus a she-ness. What the tuck? Davina, you guys are hilarious. Yeah, G-Man, one mix, and whatever that is. Remember that when that was big? Take the man out of women. Okay, so that's coming. Okay, our subject today, we're going to be talking about the WPATH files. The WPATH files just dropped this week, and I think this is one of the it is the biggest probably medical scandal to happen in our lifetime, in many lifetimes. And uh, the WPATH, if you don't know what it means, it stands for World Professional Association of Transgender Health. This is the organization that has been setting the so-called standard for so-called gender-affirming care, not just for adults, but for children in many Western countries. And these files were put together by two journalists, Michael Shellenberger and Mia Hughes, and they were published. Michael Shellenberger, you might recognize, he was part of releasing the Twitter files. So these are the WPATH files. They released them on Shellenberger's site, and they're comprehensive. It's over 250 pages. It includes the evidence included is screenshots of conversations with these doctors who are performing surgeries on children, so-called gender-affirming surgeries on children, who are prescribing cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers for children. And it's really dense, but we're going to try to there's a summary we're going to start with. I'm going to give you 4 takeaways at the very beginning. The evidence in the WPATH files is damning. It is devastating for WPATH, and it's devastating for every country that has been allowing this systemic mutilation and sterilization of children under the guise of affirming care, under the guise of helping them, achieve the body they should have. It proves what all of the critics have been saying, which is that there's nothing about this that's scientific. There's no evidence-based medicine to be found in so-called gender-affirming care. It's not based on scientific evidence. It's experimental. They are experimenting on children. The doctors are aware that they're doing this. They're aware that it's experimental. And so wait, it's not scientific, it's not evidence-based. It's experimental on kids. The doctors are aware of all of this. Number 4, they're also aware that the children are not capable of giving informed consent. And it reveals that in private communications between these doctors. What they say publicly is different than what they say privately. That they know a 9-year-old or a 14-year-old is not capable of understanding what sterilization means when they sign the consent form. They know this. And so this is unethical medical experimentation on children. It's been happening en masse. The doctors are aware of what they're doing, and they're violating the Hippocratic Oath, which is first, do no harm. I think the fallout from this, I know the mainstream propaganda machine, the cathedral, they do a great job of, because of these silos they have us in, and this whole stupid right-left thing that they have us in, and people on the left won't look at certain things. They're primed. They just push the button. They say the trigger words that they need to say, and then people on the left won't read certain things, and people on the right won't read certain things. It's just that at this moment in history, where we're at currently, it's mostly people on the left I think who are being manipulated more so, and people on the right are too, but more so than people on the right. The people on the left, all they had to say, for example, the machine had to say about the Twitter files is that these are right wingers and these are conservative. That's usually what they do. Then the left's not going to read it. They don't want to be associated with that. They don't want to be seen as a bad guy. They don't want to be seen as reading something or forming their own opinion that might conflict with that of their echo chamber and their cult. It's cult-like. And I know they're going to do that with the WPATH files as well. They're going to say crazy transphobe right wingers. Don't read these files. Don't see what's in them for yourself. They're going to do that. I think they're not going to be able to get away with it this time. I think the fallout from this is going to be huge. And so we're going to go through the summary today. We're going to look at some examples and some of the response since the files dropped. And then even though it's 250 pages, I know a lot of people don't have time to sit down and read this. People have busy lives. They're driving kids to school, to soccer practice, to, they're making dinner, they're working. So we're going to read through a large portion of it together. So if you just listen to podcasts, you can listen. You can put this on in the background. You can fast forward to this part. Cheeky Mare is going to help me, hopefully. Cheeky, we're going to put it below the chapters of each video that we do on this, so you can go directly to the part we're reading and talking about, and you can catch up with it so you hear what's in these files. Marby Dog says the fallout will be huge, but too late for thousands. Yes, and it's too late for many children who've been harmed by this. That's the thing in these files, is these doctors know that this is irreparably harming kids, irreparably harming them, permanently harming them, leading to their death in some instances, and they don't care. Okay. Let's look at the summary. We're going to start with this. Summary's only 2 pages. So if all you take away is this and you don't stick around for going through specifics, this is their executive, the summary. And you can see up there, environmental progress. That's Michael Shellenberger's site. That's where they released these files. So the WPATH files: pseudoscientific surgical and hormonal experiments on children, adolescents, and vulnerable adults. It's not just children. As you'll see they're also violating the Hippocratic Oath, because they are pushing adults who are homeless, adults who have personality disorders, who have dissociative identity disorders, who have eating disorders. They're pushing them into this so-called gender-affirming care as well, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to figure, if there's comorbidities, if there's other things going on, you're supposed to figure out the root issue. But they're just like, oh no. So you have a personality disorder, which affects your concept of self and your identity. Doesn't matter. Let's go over here and take your genitalia off. That's what's happening. The WPATH file: pseudoscientific surgical and hormonal experiments on children, adolescents, and vulnerable adults. The World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH, enjoys the reputation of being the leading scientific and medical organization devoted to transgender healthcare. WPATH is globally recognized as being at the forefront of gender medicine. However, our report shows that the opposite is true. Newly leaked files from WPATH's internal messaging forum, as well as a leaked internal panel discussion, demonstrate that the world-leading transgender healthcare group is neither scientific nor advocating for ethical medical care. These internal communications reveal that WPATH advocates for arbitrary medical practices, including hormonal and surgical experimentation on minors and vulnerable adults. While there is a place in medicine for risky experiments, these can only be justified if there is a reliable, objective diagnosis. No other treatment options are available, and the outcome for a patient or patient group is dire. So, for example, if you take an experimental if you sign up to take an experimental cancer drug because your prognosis is dire and you're willing to do that, you have an objective diagnosis of cancer. It's not subjective like this has become. Oh, yeah. I saw a video yesterday. 14-year-old walked into a gender clinic, saw a doctor that the kid had never seen before, walked out with a prescription for testosterone within 9 minutes. That's subjective. That's a subjective diagnosis. Okay. However, contrary to WPATH's claims, the best available evidence suggests that gender medicine does not fall into this category. Risky experiments can also only be justified when patients give true informed consent. When you sign up, for example, for if you're going to try out an experimental risky a new drug, you have cancer, you want to be a part of that trial, you're giving informed consent. Children are not able to understand what they're consenting to when they say, "Sure, I consent to being possibly most likely sterilized by this hormone treatment. Sure, I consent to having a permanent wound, having my penis cut off and having a permanent wound created in my genitalia area, my genital area." They don't understand what they're consenting to, and we're gonna look at that because we're gonna look at some of the young adults who've had this done to them as children. Yet the leaked messages in our report reveal that WPATH-affiliated doctors are knowingly violating bedrock principles of medical ethics and informed consent. As such, our report will prove that WPATH is promoting unethical medical experiments on children, adolescents, and vulnerable adults. The report will show that, as revealed by its own internal communications, WPATH does not meet the standards of evidence-based medicine, and members frequently discuss improvising treatments as they go along. The doctors in these communications, they're just winging it. We're actually gonna watch a video. I've shown this before. We're gonna watch a video clip of WPATH's president, a trans woman, so biological man, named Marcy Bowers, who on camera at a Duke University forum, my alma mater, was invited to speak about trans healthcare. And Marcy Bowers said on camera that 100% of the little boys that they had given hormone treatment to were essentially chemically castrated, were never able in adulthood to experience orgasm, to properly sexually function. And then in the reason the reason I thought of this when it says improvising treatments is that in that same video, Marcy Bowers goes on to say, basically, maybe it's hit or maybe we could try to give the hormones sooner, maybe take them off the hormones for a while. We should probably try. What if we gave the hormones to them later? What if we did that? They're experimenting. It's not evidence-based. It's experimentation on children. Our report will further show that members are fully aware that children and adolescents cannot comprehend the lifelong consequences of gender-affirming care, and in some cases, due to poor health literacy, neither can their parents. In the WPATH files, members demonstrate a lack of consideration for long-term patient outcomes. Despite being aware of the debilitating and potentially fatal side effects of cross-sex hormones and other treatments, there is also evidence that patients with severe mental health issues such as schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder are being allowed to consent to life-altering hormonal and surgical interventions without members making any attempt to first address these underlying issues, which is what you're supposed to do. Moreover, the files provide evidence of how far off the rails this experiment has gone, with discussions about surgeons performing non-binary surgeries. I'm sure if you're watching this, if you're a regular, you've seen some of these photos, the so-called non-binary surgery. That's where after they cut a child's, a teenager's breasts off, eh, they don't put the nipples back, and they're creating like a Ken doll look, but with no nipples there. These non-binary surgeries to create body types that do not exist in nature. These extreme body modification desires are framed as medically necessary healthcare, even though the surgeries do not meet the definition of being experimental. The files also show that autonomy, a bioethical concept that was once a shield to protect patients from being experimented on against their will by doctors, is now used by WPATH members as a sword. In its name, there is nothing a doctor can deny a patient seeking hormonal and surgical interventions. You can see this effect also here, in not just in, with doctors when it comes to the surgeries and the medication that they're prescribing, but I've interviewed psychologists before. I've talked to Jake Wiskerson comes to mind, who said you can see this in the mental health field now. The psychologists, the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, they're telling the psychologists to validate everything the patient says, to affirm and validate. And you see it here, with the surgeries and the medicine. If the patient comes in, like in that video I saw of the kid yesterday, the 14-year-old who goes in and gets testosterone in 9 minutes, they come in, they say, I feel like I might be trans. That's it. That's it. The contents of the WPATH files are of utmost importance because WPATH has broken the chain of trust in gender medicine. Trust in professional training grounded in robust scientific evidence is crucial for doctors who face time constraints that prevent exhaustive investigation of every treatment protocol. Influential organizations such as the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Endocrine Society rely on WPATHs. They look to this crazy organization, WPATH. They look to them. They rely on WPATH's standards of care when developing policy and practice guidelines for the treatment of gender dysphoria. Similarly, parents and vulnerable patients depend on clinicians influenced by WPATH. The truth about WPATH, as revealed in the files, is therefore essential for patients, including parents of trans-identified minors, to make informed decisions about their medical treatment. If you are a parent who has a child coming to you now saying that they're trans, that they think they're born in the wrong body, it is essential that you read these files. And my heart hurts because I know what's going to happen, like I said at the beginning, which is every bit of propaganda possible is going to be thrown at you to prevent you from looking into this, to prevent you from even reading it. And I would say, if you're a parent who found this video or found the files, someone sent you this or somebody else's video about it, what I would say to you is, what can it hurt for you to read this? This is your child's life at stake. This is your child's fertility in the future, your child's future. It's your child. Some children, as we're going to see, have died from these surgeries. Some people have died from these surgeries, developed permanent medical issues and problems. It is your job and responsibility as a parent to protect your children from predators, even from a predatory medical establishment and from predatory ideology. And if you are so convinced that the WPATH files are terrible and you shouldn't read them, and that's the bad guys and that's transphobes, and what can it hurt you to read it then? What can it hurt you to read it? If you're so convinced it's not going to change your opinion. You're an adult. You should be able to read things you disagree with, or you think you're going to disagree with. You're primed to disagree with. So I encourage you to do your family, do your child a favor, and look through this before you make any permanent decisions. I'm gonna show you, I told you we're gonna look at a couple of horrible examples. After after the WPATH files dropped, people started digging into some of the doctors who are mentioned in these files and finding reviews and stuff online from patients of theirs who regretted the surgeries or who had complications from the surgeries. I found a few. After seeing this one, I started looking myself and I found a few. Um, People are still digging. This information is still coming out. Here's one of the saddest cases I've seen. And I've seen a lot of sad ones because I read through the D-trans forums on Reddit and I see what these people are grappling with. And I'm going to put up a couple of those examples in a second too. But this is from an account called Women Are Real. And they said our group was curious about the Bay Area doctors mentioned in the WPATH files. After just a cursory glance at the Yelp reviews for Dr. Satterwhite, we found a distressed young person with severe complications from surgery. This young person died at 23 years old. Now, this is a young man with autism. Um, Here's his memorial. Yarden, Silviera, 1998 to 2021. This is from his memorial that you can find online. Yarden was born February 20th, 1998 in California and died May 20th, 2021 in New York. Yarden is buried in Mount Richmond Cemetery. This is, like one of those online memorial and tribute pages for someone. This is Yarden's review on Yelp for his doctor, and there have been other reviews unearthed by him. Let's read through this one. 1 star. This is a young person trying to get the word out, trying to speak about his experience with this surgery and the consequences in a world that does not want to listen to him. In this whole trans part of the social justice woke cult, if you come out as trans, oh, you're on a pedestal. It's cakes and balloons. You're a hero. You're an oppressed minority. Oh, you are put up. You are showered in affirmation, validation, affection. What kids, especially gender non-conforming kids, autistic kids, kids who've already been abused in some way, what kids wouldn't look at that and find that attractive? To be celebrated and told you're loved and you're special and to be showered in this affection and attention. This is creating unfair incentives. It's incentivizing this for children. Any child who's gender nonconforming, who feels like an outsider, who's autistic like Yarden was, who had, like I said, has been abused, has other psychological problems going on. It's attractive. But here's what happens if, like Yarden, you have a terrible experience or you have regret or you try to detransition, you are scum of the earth to this ideology. Everyone who showered you with affection and attention now treats you as an enemy, as internally transphobic. I've even interviewed a detransitioner who said that when she transitioned, when she said she was trans and she spoke to her therapist about it, her psychologist about it, she was pushed into it. Oh, celebration, validation. We figured out what's wrong. You're actually a boy. Let's get you on the hormones. And after a few years on the hormones and regretting her decision and deciding to detransition, she told me her therapist, her psychologist was primed to tell her, no, what are you talking about, detrans? Something else must be going on here. They were pushing her away. They were pushing her away from becoming comfortable in her own body and her own biological sex. And they do that to young people like Yarden. They treat them like pariah if they become a so-called detransitioner. So here's his review. And the writing is kind of small. I'm gonna this is as big as I can make it, I think. I'm gonna read it for you. Yarden, 1 star. I wish I never listened to the medical and psychiatric community when they told me it was possible to change my sex. What a lie. Very dangerous and unethical. Sex reassignment surgery is a hit and miss type of surgery, but they don't tell you that. They never do. And maybe if I didn't have autism, maybe if my brain wasn't so defective, I would have caught on before it was too late. I wish there was a cure for autism, but that's unlikely. It's endless suffering on top of even more suffering. I also wish voluntary euthanasia was legal. My death, likely painful, has proven that ethics are not universal and are otherwise non-existent. No one is truly there for me. There's no need to pretend. I have a gaping hole in my genital area with my colon spilling out, disgusting, and a ring of scar tissue blocking most of the entrance. If the colon can't discharge, that leaves it with severe blockage, which then could turn and likely expected into blood clots, followed by death. I've already reached the stage of blockage. What hurts me the most is the loneliness and the inability to find a partner. I can't have a normal sex life. I'm a loser, and I probably deserve this deception. Nobody deserves this. Um, this is what I get for messing with nature. Mankind is destructive and self-destructed. And I self-destructed. I just wanted friendship and love. I wanted life to be easier. I wanted to be a woman since I was 15. I wish I had the knowledge that I have today. I was a confused kid with no identity. I wish I could have done everything different, but it's too late now. I'm royally screwed. Dr. Thomas Satterwhite and Dr. Maurice Garcia, both in California, and who are my original surgeons, have basically killed me. With accessory to my death is Dr. Miroslav Georgievic, Dr. Rajveer Purhat, and Dr. Rachel Bluebon Legner, and Dr. Jess Ting, who all refused to help me despite having letters by one psychiatrist and 2 clinical social workers recommending reversal surgery and my detransitioning. My last wish is for the state of California and the state of New York, and I wish I had the second part of this, what his last wish is. I think if somebody can pull it up on Yelp, please do. This was a review that he left for Thomas Satterwhite. Um, I don't know how people can read these stories and these testimonies, and there are tons of them like this if you start reading them. If you are on the left, if you are someone who's in social justice or woke ideology, maybe you don't even realize you are. Maybe you just think you're a liberal and you haven't really been paying attention to this ideology and how it's different from liberalism, and you've been pulled along with all the propaganda and the messaging about, protecting trans kids and not being transphobic, which is great. Don't be hateful. Don't bully people for having gender dysphoria. That's great. I understand how someone gets pulled along into that. But I'm begging you to read some of these stories. This is not an isolated case. That's what a lot of people say. A lot of people who are in the social justice ideology, who don't have good intent, who are not open-minded like you, who I'm talking to, those people will come back and say, oh, it's just 1 or 2 people. It's not. It's not. You can go to the detransition forums at Reddit and read story after story. You don't even have to go to the detrans forum. You can go to the surgery complication forums and read story after story. These are people who haven't decided to detrans yet. Maybe they won't, but they're describing these horrible conditions they're now living with because of getting these operations. Just read it. It doesn't mean you have to change your mind, but why Why let people why let people control you, manipulate you, and keep you from looking at this with an open mind, with a scientific mind? I'm gonna show you, uh, something else that's come out about Yarden. Ugh. This is from my friend, Christina Buttons, who is a journalist who covers a lot of these issues, and I've interviewed her before. She's another person like me who left the social justice ideology and who now feels compelled to speak against it and to do reporting, trying to expose what's happening to children. She's excellent. You can find her on Twitter at Buttons Lives. Um, hey, Mario. Just goes to show that even with expertise in said field, even the experts can be engulfed in ideology at times. That or they're just cowards. Yes, I think a lot of them just don't care. They're just in it for the money. They don't care, and they go along with the ideology. By the way, it was great to see you yesterday at book club. Thank you for the super chat. Big Raj, thank you for the super sticker for $1.99 and hanging out today with such a heavy topic, but an important topic. Okay, so this is Christina Button shared this. She said another Yelp review left by Yarden Silviera revealed that he sought assistance from his doctors at Mount Sinai in New York for detransitioning after experiencing complications from vaginoplasty. According to Yarden, he was suffering from, quote, a blocked colon canal that's spilling out of his genital area. And his doctor suggested that he, quote, try physical therapy. Yarden included a screenshot of the email he received from Mount Sinai, which canceled his appointment and stated they would not be able to offer him services. 2 months later, he passed away. He was only 23. I'm gonna interject here for a second. When the dishonest people say things like, "It's only 1 or 2 people, it's not that many," they're lying, first of all. We have no idea how many kids regret this later on because this is currently unfolding. So, you're a liar if you pretend like you know what the numbers are of detransitioners. Some of the studies I've read estimate that it's a wide range from between 1 to 25%. Those are some of the ones I've looked at. But look here at, Christina. She says, "My preliminary survey of 94 individuals who detransitioned or desisted pending publication revealed that 72% of those seeking medical assistance faced significant challenges, and 78% of those who sought insurance coverage for detransition services had difficulty accessing it." So we're rushing to push people into transitioning into this medical experimentation that leaves many of them with permanently debilitating conditions or even leads to death and leads to sterilization. We're rushing to push them into that and to get health insurance to cover it because it's gender affirming care, right? But if then they have complications like Yarden did and they seek out help, they have trouble getting health insurance to cover detransition surgeries, and their doctors brush them off, and the community disowns them. Christina says currently there are no billing codes for detransitioning, nor is there anything resembling a standard of care for this growing population. Additionally, some insurance companies explicitly exclude detransition procedures. Detransitioners deserve better support and recognition, and anyone experiencing gender related distress deserves better than the quote, gender affirming model of care. This is Yarden. Here's another review that he left, another Yelp review from Mount Sinai Union Square in New York. He says, "I'm 23 years old and I'm begging you, listen to me. I came from California to New York after 6 years of trying to transition to the opposite sex, aka gender, which is indeed binary. Sorry. Gotta gotta like his, see, I think for someone like him, once you've dealt with it, it's you have little patience for for the propaganda that you bought into that led you to this place, and, I kinda like his impatience there, which is indeed binary. Sorry. I have mutilated and non-functioning genitals. I have an open wound. I'm physically wounded, and these people don't care. I already received an evaluation and recommendation letter by a Mount Sinai psychiatrist, on top of having a letter signed by a California nurse, a letter by a private therapist in Brooklyn, a letter by a social worker signed off by her supervising clinical social worker, which was given to Mount Sinai and Dr. Merzlov, detransitioning, Dvorak's office. They still won't clear me for surgery because of the simple fact that I'm detransitioning and wanting to have my genitals back or some form of genitals. I don't want to die a virgin, but it appears that's likely what's going to happen now. I need surgery and nobody seems to care. Oh, how easy it was to transition and live in delusion. But now that reality has caught up with me, I'm no longer allowed to choose what type of life I want to live. I choose to not reject my biological self. I choose to live a life that corresponds with my biological self, not a life rejecting my biological self. That's my fundamental human right. I'm begging you, ladies and gentlemen, and others, you cannot change your gender or your sex. These surgeons are not doctors. They are enemy. They only want to use you for their gain and profit. They know the surgeries are inadequate and they know that the complication rate is higher than 30%, even higher than 50%, but they don't care. Once they have damaged your body, they will disregard you collectively. Their entire medical community will collectively ignore you. There will be no surgery that will save you. They refuse to take additional risks because of liability issues. You will cry and cry and cry until you realize it's too late for you. Then you'll be on the verge of suicide and still nobody will care. Transgender ideology is not only dangerous, but it is a rejection of biology and empowering the pharmaceutical industry. The doctors, the psychiatrists, etc., they're all in on it. It's a political nightmare. I'm sure this review will be attacked as transphobic simply because I'm speaking the truth. But at the end of the day, estrogen physically destroys the male body, testosterone physically destroys the female body, and surgery is merely mutilation, cutting into perfectly healthy organs and skin and causing unnecessary damage. And nobody seems to care as long as they make a profit. This is a sick healthcare system. Don't listen to the media. Don't listen to anyone who pushes you to the transgender ideology or to, quote, follow your heart and your feeling. Being transgender is a mental illness, and I had to mentally cure myself because these professionals are sick scumbags with an agenda of their own. And here he included an email from his doctor basically saying they're not going to be able to offer him any services and they've canceled his appointment. And he died 2 months after this. I'm sorry for the heavy topic today. I think it's vitally important, and I hope somehow that people who have kids who are coming home and saying they're trans or non-binary, I hope that you read stories like Yarden's. I hope that you read the WPATH Files. I think it is a travesty what the establishment has been doing to families like yours and to your children. And and I hope that you'll pay attention now that this information's out there. We've already done 2 hours. Have we done 2? No, we've done 1 hour. Okay, good. Woo! I was like, how did we do 2 hours? And I just got to the summary of the WPATH files. Okay, here, let's open this up. I've got a couple of summaries that we can look at, and then I might save like getting into the meat of all the files later, but this will give us some nuggets for some of it. I've also got a short video clip I want to show you. Let's see. It's not just conservative outlets covering it, which is, I think, another indication that they're not going to be able to bury this like they try to bury things like the Twitter files. I think this is going to have long-lasting effects, and I hope that's right. But I'm pulling up the Daily Wire article because they have a couple of excerpts I wanted to read. And so I am pulling up a conservative publication. Oh my goodness. Okay, the Daily Wire, The Secret History of WPATH, the perverse cult that pushed gender madness into the mainstream. This is by Matt Walsh. When the Sixth Circuit upheld Tennessee's ban on the chemical castration of children last year, they singled out the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH. This is the organization that major hospitals and gender clinics cite as the all-important authority on so-called trans healthcare. In fact, in court, the ACLU argued that WPATH's professional opinions are important enough to overturn the will of the overwhelming majority of the voters in the state of Tennessee. But the Sixth Circuit was not convinced. In its opinion, the court pointed out that WPATH, by its own admission, has presented, quote, limited data, end quote, on the, quote, long-term physical, psychological, and neurodevelopmental outcomes, end quote, that result from administering puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to children. In part because WPATH's data and documentation wasn't exactly comprehensive, the court allowed the ban on these so-called treatments to take effect. 6 months later, we now have a window into what data and documentation WPATH actually does have in its possession, and it's not, quote, limited as they previously admitted. Instead, this internal documentation at WPATH is comprehensive evidence that so-called gender-affirming care is an unscientific scam that ruins the lives of children and permanently damages their bodies. And crucially, the documents prove that WPATH knows it. This is what I was talking about. The doctors know this. These leaked WPATH files come to us from a think tank called Environmental Progress and the independent journalist Michael Shellenberger. Among the files is this internal communication that WPATH from a doctor concerning a 16-year-old girl who developed liver tumors, large ones, after she was given drugs to suppress menstruation as well as testosterone. Quote, patient found to have 2 liver masses, and the oncologist and the surgeon both have indicated that the likely offending agents are the hormones. In response to that report, another doctor on the WPATH discussion forum said that one of his colleagues had developed liver cancer and died after taking testosterone for about a decade. Quote, to the best of my knowledge, it was linked to his hormonal treatment, the doctor wrote. Quote, it was so advanced that he opted for palliative care and died a couple of months later. They're talking about a woman here, although they're saying he, but they're talking about a woman who got liver cancer, most likely, they say, linked to the hormone treatment, and died. At no point in these documents does WPATH suggest that they should go public with these concerns. Why would they tell the public any of this, right? They don't immediately run to the media with their determination that cross-sex hormones could contribute to fatal liver cancer. They don't warn anyone, as far as I can tell. Instead, they press on with a plan to mutilate the 16-year-old girl with the liver tumors that they've apparently caused. Quote, we are prepared to support the patient in any way we can, e.g. top surgery when medically stable, etc. Matt Walsh says, ghoulish doesn't begin to describe this. After concluding that they've possibly caused tumors in a teenage girl's liver, their only concern, apparently, is how quickly they can remove her breasts. In fact, from the documents, it appears that WPATH tries to rush these procedures in general before patients can reach adulthood. One surgeon, Christine N. McGinn, boasts that she has performed more than a dozen vaginoplasties on patients under the age of 18. Let's pause here for a second. This is the surgery they keep telling us doesn't happen, or only happens a few times. When you show them studies that say, well, how there's a study here of kids they did this to, little boys, where they removed their penis and their testicles and their scrotum, and then they gave them this open wound, this fake neovagina is their fancy word for it. They gave them. There are studies about this and the outcomes, and they say, well, there are just a few of them included in studies, but it's not happening. It is happening. It is happening. They've pretty much quit denying, at least the ones I talk to have quit denying that they're doing radical mastectomies on little girls. They admit that now, but they still try and pretend they're not castrating boys. They are. So here we go. So she boasts that she's performed more than a dozen of these vaginoplasties on patients under the age of 18. In this context, that means removing a child's penis, testicles, and scrotum and replacing them with a non-functioning open wound. The surgeon writes, quote, "I feel the best time for surgery in the US is the summer before their last year of high school," end quote. She also says many other surgeons in this community agree with her. What makes this even more egregious, as if that's even possible, is that WPATH knows that children can't provide informed consent to any of this butchery. They admit to that in these files as well. Shellenberger obtained this footage showing WPATH members discussing how little patients understand about these procedures. Parts of this video were made public last year, but Shellenberger obtained the full thing. Here are parts of it. Let's see. Can you guys see this if I play this little excerpt?
A year and a half ago, a video of gender medicine experts went viral. On it, they talked about how hard it is to talk with teenagers about whether they might want to have kids one day.
It's always a good theory that you talk about fertility preservation with a 14-year-old, but I know I'm talking to a blank wall. And the same would happen for a cisgender kid, right? They'd be like, ew, kids, babies, gross.
Can we just look at these reactions? He says it's a good idea to talk about sterility with a 14-year-old that you're recommending, get these procedures done that are going to sterilize them. And then he says, but you're talking to a blank wall, meaning they don't comprehend it. They're not able to comprehend what you're talking about. Oh, he elaborates a lot more, but I just wanted to pause it because look at this doctor. Look at this sociopath up here on the left laughing. I'm just rewinding it. Even the woman below laughs a little bit. I don't think this is a normal human social cue reflex where you're kind of smiling or laughing, because I don't think it's a normal, like, oh yeah, I've had that conversation. I don't think it's that kind of smile of familiarity. The guy on the upper left is laughing that, of course, these 14-year-olds don't get this. Look at him. They don't get it. They don't understand what they're consenting to in the consent forms we make them sign. Look at his eyes there. I'm sorry, I can't help but notice these nonverbal cues in people sometimes, and this guy, I think he's sick. Sorry. This is just my gut. I'm not saying anything scientific. I'm just saying that guy looks pretty freaking evil to me. Okay. Yeah, there he is smiling. Okay, let's just rewind this part. We'll play it.
About fertility preservation with a 14-year-old.
Wait.
I want to have kids one day.
It's always a good theory that you talk about fertility preservation with a 14-year-old, but I know I'm talking to a blank wall. And the same would happen for a cisgender kid, right? They'd be like, ew, kids, babies, gross. Or the usual stock answer is, I'm going to adopt. I'm just going to adopt. And then you ask them, well, what does that involve? Like, how much does it cost? oh, I thought you just like went to the orphanage and they gave you a baby. No, it's not quite like that.
That's Dr. Daniel Metzger, and he's talking about the challenge of getting what's known as informed consent from children and adolescents to undergo procedures that will result in their sterilization. Over the last several years, doctors, medical experts, and the media have all said that the best way to help adolescents in distress about their gender is to give them puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries to align their physical sex with their gender identity. The alternative to doing so, they said, was suicide. But now a new study released last month found no scientific evidence to support the claim that drugs and surgeries prevent suicide among people with gender dysphoria. Now, I agree we should be concerned about children and adolescents experiencing distress about their biological sex. But now there's even more evidence to warrant greater caution in how we treat them. Whistleblowers have given me the internal files from the main gender medicine organization, which is known as WPATH and stands for the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. The WPATH files show surgeons, therapists, and activists discussing internally how to treat people with gender distress. What they show is that what's happening is neither good science nor good medicine. There's a discussion, for example, about the blocking of puberty of a 10-year-old girl. There's a discussion of doing genital surgery on people with schizophrenia and a dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. At the core of medical ethics is getting this informed consent from the people receiving the medicine or from their caregivers. The WPATH files show overwhelming evidence that the professionals within WPATH know they're not getting consent from children, adolescents, and vulnerable adults or from their caregivers. They know that so-called gender-affirming care can result in lifelong complications and sterility. Their patients do not understand the implications. Many patients are unaware that they will lose sexual function, including the ability to experience orgasm. After I received these files, my colleagues and I tried to report on them as we would journalists. We quickly became overwhelmed by the size and complexity of the project. And so we decided to write a full report about the files for Environmental Progress, our nonprofit research institute, in order to put the WPATH files in the context of the best available science about gender distress.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. I'm going to stop it there. That doctor at the beginning who's talking about how, talking to a 14-year-old about fertility and sterilization and how they don't comprehend it, and then he says, even a cis, he uses the fake made up word, a cis kid wouldn't get it, and the other doctor in the corner, the sociopathic looking one, is laughing. And he goes on to say, like, you try to have these conversations with these kids and they say, well, I don't want kids are gross. Ugh. It's a child. They know it's a child. They know the child doesn't have any concept. They have no idea if they're going to want to have kids in the future or not. They're at that stage where they're like, ooh, kids, gross. They know that. He says that. The kids say stuff like that. Or then they say, well, if I want a kid later, I'll just adopt. And he's like, well, to the kid, do you understand what's involved in adoption? And the kid's like, don't you just go to the orphanage and they give you a kid? Like, they're children. They have a childlike understanding of things. And yet these doctors, sociopathic in my opinion, they know this. They know the kids are not capable of giving informed consent, and yet they're having them sign consent forms. They're pretending like they understand it, and when they speak publicly, they don't speak the way they do privately. AD Victorian, thank you for the super chat for $5. Keri, would you be interested in interviewing a male detransitioner? If so, I can send you a pitch to consider. Yes, please email me. I've interviewed a detransitioner before, a woman. I'd love to talk to a guy who's been through this. Send me an email. It's deprogrammed@gmail.com. Deprogrammedpod@gmail.com. And thank you very much. Yeah, Dion, they know, which makes it double plus evil. Yes. It's evil. I saw Force of Light was here. I don't know if she's still here, but hello, ladies. I saw her in the comments saying, yeah, this is evil. It is. This is absolutely, they are willfully doing this, knowing that the children are not capable of consenting. I'm also going to show you this clip that I've shown before, and I think it's very relevant. It's relevant again. It comes up again in these files. This is, where's that? Here we go. This is the president of WPATH. The president of WPATH, who is a biological man, a trans woman, a biological man who presents as a woman, named Marcy Bowers, and I'm choosing not to use his preferred pronouns because I think what he's doing to kids is evil. And I'm not gonna extend that civility. Sorry. So Marcy Bowers, he recently, I played this on my channel when this came out, was part of a panel at Duke University, my alma mater, where they brought in people to talk about trans healthcare. In fact, they have this here. Let me show you this. They still have the website up from when they did this presentation at Duke. Charting a path for transgender health and policy. And here they have the sociopath flag in the background, the new pride flag. I've just started calling it the sociopath flag. The one where they just keep adding things that don't make it's getting crazier and crazier. It has nothing to do. It's completely divorced from gay and lesbian people or even people with gender dysphoria. It's sociopaths using these communities. And now they have black and brown on there for using black and brown people. And they've got the circle on there for autistic people who they're using. And so I encourage you just to start calling this the sociopath flag. That's what it is. And it keeps changing. They keep updating it. Anyway, Duke has the sociopath flag there, and they say charting a path for transgender health and policy. Duke Symposium on Transgender Health highlights differences in needs, but support for a community that is increasingly vulnerable. Yes, vulnerable to the very predatory president of WPATH that you invited here for the conversation. And they go on to tell you about the conversation, but here it is. Let's take a look at this. That the person there on the right, second from the top, that's Marcy Bowers as the president of WPATH, a biological man, who's performed a number of these so-called gender-affirming cares. He's done a number of cares on kids, and just listen to what he's about to admit.
The second was an observation that I had that every single child or adolescent who was truly blocked at Tanner stage 2 has never experienced orgasm. I mean, it's really about zero. These are just assigned male at birth, so trans feminine, and it's because they never in their lives are exposed to testosterone. That doesn't change. So blockers prevent the rise of testosterone, and they don't really go on testosterone at or around surgery or into adulthood. And so we don't know. They're going to have this sensation. There's no question about that.
So he just admitted that little boys who they've been giving these puberty blockers to. Now, remember, puberty blockers, the ones that they usually use they use Lupron, which is not approved by the FDA for this purpose, but doesn't seem to matter to the medical establishment. They're using Lupron. He just admits that for little boys they give this to at Tanner stage 2, so that's around like 11 or 12 years old, that those boys are essentially chemically castrated. They never experience orgasm. They have zero in 100% of cases, he says. So sexual dysfunction as a result of puberty blockers. Now, remember, puberty blockers, the Lupron, as I mentioned, that these are the ones that they keep telling us, and they keep pushing through their propaganda channels to all the well-intentioned leftists who eat this up and then go and repeat it without looking into it. They keep telling us puberty blockers don't cause any permanent harm. Puberty blockers, they just pause. It's a pause button. Have you heard this? It's a pause button for puberty. It doesn't cause any irreparable harm. Puberty blockers are reversible. They're reversible. It's a pause button. Lies. This is the president of WPATH sitting there saying 100% of cases of little boys they've given these puberty blockers to will never have an orgasm in their life as an adult because you blocked the testosterone. They did not develop normally. Crazy admission, right? So that's the first stunning thing about this video. Second stunning thing is you're about to hear him talk about basically admitting that this is medical experimentation. It's not based on a history of it's not evidence-based. It's not based on a history of research. He starts talking about how we're just going to have to spitball. Maybe we give the puberty blockers earlier. Maybe we give them later. Maybe we do this on kids. Listen to this.
Going to have this sensation. There's no question about that. But are they going to be able to achieve sexual satisfaction? It's important in relationships. And I know that from my work with female genital mutilation survivors, that the lack of being able to be intimate with a partner is very important. And so this is what really raised the red flag for me, is to say, look, we need to have our eyes open about it. I think it's been beneficial talking about it. I know Joe and many others have reported to me, they've changed their approach a little bit in their informed consent models, and that we're talking about masturbation now. We're talking about, okay, that's an area of the body that's got very dysphoric for you, but you know what? It's all a penis is just a large clitoris. I mean, it's all the same material. It really is. So use it for the pleasurable purposes, partially that it was intended, and we'll see what happens. But these are to be answered questions. So can we avoid puberty and get good adult results? And secondly, how do we assure someone that they're going to be able to be sexually responsive? Do we remove the blockers during the course of their adolescence and let a little bit of puberty come back? Do we delay it a little bit, maybe into Tanner's 3 or 4, maybe before they have their first orgasms? Maybe.
You hear that? The spitballing? Maybe we just delay giving the puberty blockers later. Maybe we give it to them and take it away. These are kids they're experimenting on. They're sterilizing these children. They're chemically castrating these young boys. And Duke University invites these sociopaths to come and give a presentation. I use the word sociopath because it's like, look, the very community, the very people they're predating on, these are predators. The very community they're predating on is the one they're paraded out as caring about this vulnerable population, this population that they are taking advantage of, mutilating, sterilizing, in some cases killing. They're paraded out as protecting this vulnerable population. It's I think I almost said politician, because it reminds me of a politician. It's up is down, down is up. It's absolute Darvo, deny and reverse victim offender. It's the exact opposite of what's happening. These people are presented as protecting trans kids. You see their signs at rallies and stuff, protect trans kids. What they mean by that is sterilize, mutilate, and sometimes kill gender nonconforming kids. That's what they mean. Autistic kids. Kids who've been abused. That's what they mean. Force of Light. Thank you for the super chat, ladies. Force of Light says these people are warped. Have a blessed weekend. Oh, thank you so much. And another one. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. She says, I work around doctors. There are some good ones, but I have found a lot of them to be terrible people. Many sociopaths with God complexes. Not all. Yes. Always not all, but I think that's absolutely the case. I saw a study once that said there's a higher percentage of sociopaths who go on to be surgeons than in some other fields, which I think on some level makes sense. Maybe there's less emotional attachment, and it's easier to detach yourself for something. Maybe that helps. That's beneficial to you as someone that's cutting open people and dealing with life and death, and being able to go in and do that and remain clinical and professional and unattached is, maybe that's why it's appealing. Art photographer Lindsay, who's a member for 9 months, thank you, says this issue woke me up from decades of being woke. Thank you for sharing that with me, because I know people can leave the cult I was in. I do call it a cult. I've gone over the many reasons why I think it has characteristics of a cult before. So I know people can leave, and I love to hear from people. I love to interview people who've left, and I think these WPATH files potentially are going to wake up a lot of people. I mean, I have in mind, maybe you do, I have in mind some of my friends on the left who are sort of, they're not super online. They're sort of casually have been pulled, like woke adjacent, have been pulled along to accept certain things about woke ideology without really looking at them or questioning them or understanding. And I'm thinking, okay, I know some people I can send this to who might actually read it, and it might open their eyes to what we're talking about. So that's good news. Thank you, Lindsay. Tiger. Sorry, my dog is trying to make a nest on the couch. Do your dogs ever do that, where they try to there's imaginary brush or something there that he's putting into a little bed? I don't know. Okay, sorry. Fernando Nauman, for $5.99. It's not lira. Is it euros? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Thank you for the super chat. Sorry, he says, "Hi, Keri. I'm watching from Berlin, and I'm moved by your story and your beautiful heart. Keep laughing so freely, and let me know when you're in Europe." Oh, dude, Fernando. Okay. My husband and I are very likely going to be in Germany. We are going to be in Germany again this year, what amounts to our fall here. So probably around maybe like September or October. I can't remember the dates offhand, but I'll announce it. And last time I was in Germany, we did kind of some impromptu meetups with some people from the chat at some of my husband's shows. But I think this time I'll have enough time to plan it. And since I saw that there were people there who wanted to say hello, we could do a meetup or something maybe. Anyway, I'll announce it when I'm there, but that's cool. I'm really happy to meet people from Germany, because I feel like when I was there, I felt like a lot of the things that are problems here in the States culturally are maybe a little worse in some cases there in Germany, and people have a greater fear of speaking against it because of Germany's unique history and the fear of being called some of the words that we get called when we criticize social justice. It seems to be a little stronger there, maybe. It's just my guess. Justin Swaney, new member. Thank you and welcome, Justin. Thank you guys for being here on a day with such a, like I said, such emotionally disturbing news, but I do think it's important. Okay, so we watched the clip of the Duke University forum with the president of WPATH admitting that these little boys are being chemically castrated in 100% of cases, he said, and then also admitting that they're just basically experimenting, like maybe we'll try this, maybe we'll do this on children. I'm wondering if I should put a pin in it here and come back, and instead of delving into the 250 pages today, if I should put a pin in it and come back. Keto and Crime for $5. Hey, Tracy. Keto and Crime has a great channel, a true crime channel. One of my friends, good to see you. She says no gay person would design that visually hideous of a flag. Also, the rainbow was meant to represent everyone. They're evil and stupid. Tracy, thanks for the comment. Tracy's like, oh, Tracy's like, lesbian here would like to comment. No, no gay person would make that ugly of a flag. Yeah, that's why I'm just gonna call it the sociopath flag. That's what it is. um, I think I'm gonna put a pin in it today, and we'll come back to this. What I plan on doing the rest of the week when we come back on Monday is, because I want to cover all of the WPATH files and I don't want to spread it out just Mondays and Fridays. I think I might just do a solid week of shows. And so if you see that happening on this channel and you're like, why is Keri streaming every day? That's unusual. I think because I want to get through all this and put it so people can put it on in the background and listen to these specifics and the crazy stuff that these doctors have said to each other that they've admitted in private. And I also want to go over some of the specific doctors and possibly have a few interviews. So my plan is for the next week, I'm gonna stream every day about this. And if that's not your cup of tea and you've read it on your own and you don't want to hear it, no worries. We will be back Wednesday night with a new panel show. So this coming Wednesday at 6:00 Central, we're going to be doing that Christian panel again, which is usually myself, Odin from OMB Movie Reviews, Michelle from Force of Light, who was here today, and Brahma Bull. Our special guest this Wednesday is supposed to be Drunk 3PO. We're going to be reviewing the movie Ordinary Angels, and it's only in theaters. So if you want to see it before Wednesday night, make a date day or a friend day or a day to just go and enjoy and relax by yourself to go to the movies, like in the old days when we went to the movies. And it's in theaters. It's starring Hilary Swank. I think my husband and I are going to see it Tuesday night. Anyway, if you want to see it before we talk about it, we're talking about it on Wednesday at 6:00. And I have to remind everyone and make sure Drunk 3PO has time to watch it so he can come hang out with us that night. But that's coming up on Wednesday. But I will see you guys. I'll see you guys on Monday, and we're going to go through the WPATH files day by day until we get through it. I think it's incredibly important, and I'm really grateful to the whistleblowers, the people who released this information, the journalists who've published it, and to the kids, the young people like Yarden who shared their testimony of what happened to them. Okay, thank you guys very much. I hope you have a great weekend. Take care. Oh wait, hold on. Fernando Nauman, thank you for the super chat. He says, yes, it is much worse here in Germany and Europe in general. I would love to meet up. Oh, cool. Okay, we will definitely do something. We've got time to figure it out. Well, now, and thank you for that perspective, because I can't tell my perspective as an American coming over there. I'm getting a glimpse of things for a few days. So, but it did seem to me that people are more afraid of stepping on toes there or being called the N word. There's lots of N words now. I mean, Nazi. They're more afraid of like that insult, that when people use it incorrectly and they use it to label you so no one listens to you and that kind of thing. I think that's more effective when they do that there. And here in the States, we don't have the same exact history with that. So maybe the fear here is a little less. I don't know. Anyway, I've been called that word incorrectly, and it's whatever. People can say whatever they want. Keto and Crime for $5. Thank you. Says, I'm a true crime nut and horror fan, and I'm scared, so scared by this. This is epic levels of evil. It is. It is epic. And we've sort of become inured to it, I think, and gotten used to the fact that it's happening. And every once in a while, I have to remind myself how horrific this is. And that's why reading through stories like Yarden's, I think, are important, because it personalizes it for you and reminds you of just the evil that was done to that young man. Not just the surgery, but then the way they just abandoned him afterwards and left him to die. It's unspeakable. So I hope there will be some kind of accountability for the doctors who did this. I hope that eventually happens. Okay, guys, have a good weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Take care.